Welcome to episode 2 of Colney Catch-Up, Watford FC Women's new podcast series in partnership with Melp. Today I'm speaking with Anne Meiwald, our rock in defence, and one of our longest serving players. So, May, how are you today?
Yeah, not bad. Nice to be sat here catching up with you.
Nice. So, as I said, you're one of our longest serving players. 6th season, I think.
Yeah.
So, what is it about this place that keeps you coming back? What makes it feel like home?
Yeah, I honestly, there's something about Watford that keeps you here. I think there's a few girls who would say that who've been here season on season. It's Watford was there for me at a time where I was out of love with football, as cliched as that sounds, and I just came here to play and enjoy it again. That's where I found my love again, and I've enjoyed it every season since. And I felt like we've always wanted to push on and be ambitious, and we've grown year on year, and I've wanted to be part of that journey, and that's probably one of the key things that's kept me here.
Amazing. And I don't know if you're aware, but you're actually really fast approaching joining the 100 club. I think you're on 91 appearances so far.
Okay.
Did you know that? And if you didn't, how does it feel coming so close? And what would it mean to you to reach that number, that magic 100?
To be fair, I did actually know, because obviously Megs did 100 a couple of weeks ago, and she asked as well the stats guys what I was on, see how close we were. So I hadn't realised it was quite 91, but yeah. I don't know. I don't know how I've managed it, really.
Little pre-Christmas treat, maybe, making the big 100.
Yeah, I actually don't know what it would be if I'm fit for every game, but yeah, hopefully. It would be great, amazing to get there. Like, I think it's been one of the things, especially the last season, this season, that I personally want to reach that goal, that milestone. I don't think not every person reaches it in their career, especially for a club that has meant so much to me over the last few years. So, really proud moment when and if I make it. So.
Yeah, well, I think it's important though. Like, we talk all the time about team achievements, team milestones. I think it's really important for players to have their own personal ones as well. And, as you said, for a club that you love being at so much, that is, I know what it meant to me to make that magic number. So I think it's important to have those individual goals as well.
Yeah, 100%. Like, you have to be driven internally as well, not just from what you want to achieve as a team. And it's been a big one for me since probably the last year or so, where I thought, oh, actually, I think I'm gonna make it. So yeah, I think it'll be one of my proudest achievements in my career if I make it.
Oh, that's nice. Well, let's take it back a little bit. As one of the more experienced players, we might have to go back a few years here, but talk to me about what it was like growing up. What got you into football? Who was it? Are there any key people in your life that got you into football, and what was it about football that made it stick?
Yeah. Well, funny thing, my mum always gets really annoyed when I say this, because I used to always say, "Oh, it's my dad." Like, he loves football, and which is true. Like, he was massive into football. But my mum's always like, "Well, so's my family. Like, why don't you ever talk about me?" So shout out to her as well, because between the two of them, like, that's how I started. Just like, there's videos of me, like, they're just throwing a little ball at me and I'm kicking it back, and I didn't have any older brothers or sisters or anything like that. And then when my two brothers came along, that was kind of the thing we played. And I started, I think, for Lauf Old Boys when I was in the under 8s, I think, 7 or something like that.
So that's in Germany?
No, it's in Lauf where I grew up.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow, okay.
I was only 4 months old when we moved to England, so I've grown up here.
Okay.
But yeah, they didn't have a girls' team at that stage, so I just played with the boys. I think I played with them until I was 11, and at that stage you can't play with the boys anymore.
Yeah.
So I think I had a year out maybe when we were trying to find somewhere to play. But yeah, luckily got picked up by the Lincoln RTC at the time, the Centre of Excellence.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I made my way through. But football was never a priority when I was younger. I was a swimmer for a long time.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Any stroke in particular?
I used to do 100 metres freestyle.
Cool. That's ongoing.
So yeah, that was my main sport. Like, I'd get up before school in the morning and train after school, and then do kind of football in between that. I didn't really take football as my primary sport seriously until just before I turned 16, Becky Anderson was in the year above me, and she had gone to the Arsenal Academy the year before. And my coach at Lincoln was like, oh, like, you know, Becky went last year, she really enjoyed it, like, why don't you go try out? And at that point I was like, oh, okay, am I good enough for that?
It's a big move away as well, from Lincoln to down to London as well.
Yeah, like, you know, I'd never really considered doing that, and I don't think I'd ever considered that I was like good enough for that. I'd finally realised I was not going to be an Olympic swimmer because I am not tall enough for that. And I thought, why not? Like, I've got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
So I did it, got in, and then, moved down south, and that's when it really kicked on.
Going back to the part where you played with the boys, do you think that helped you become the player you are? I mean, I know, having come up against you in training and in games, that you're not fun to come up against in terms of how you defend. You're strong, you're tenacious. Do you think those sorts of traits potentially came a little bit from playing with the boys up until sort of 11 or 12?
100%, I think so. I think it shaped the way, like, I play.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know any different, but, like, I just think, like, when you play with boys and you're in that environment, like, you have to be more aggressive, you have to be more tenacious, because although, like, I don't think at the time I took too much notice of it, like, there were definitely comments about, oh, like, you know, there's a girl playing.
Yeah.
And so you're, like, at every stage just having to prove yourself every time you played against boys. Like, we used to go to this summer camp in Germany for football, and I still remember the first time I went there, we were all sat in the line, and I was old enough to be in the older group, and they were like, looked at me like, oh no, but she's a girl, she should probably go in the middle group, like, obviously thinking I wasn't good enough. And my mum had to step in and be like, no, she'll be fine. And then, like, the first training session, they were like, yeah, okay, she's fine.
I love that. Okay, so we've covered swimming, we've covered your early years. I'm going to skip forward again. You have a very interesting job, and I mean, I don't know if I can call you a doctor, but you'd certainly be my pick for a teammate on a pub quiz team. Can you? I've never really understood it though. So can you give us a little bit of an insight into what your job is, how you got into it, why you got into it, and how, like, not how you feel about it, but just what your job and your career means to you?
Yeah, okay. I mean, I work as a project lead within a health economics and data analysis department within a wider company. So what it basically is that we're a consultancy company. So we work with pharmaceutical companies on projects that they basically generate an evidence for their interventions in terms of whether or not it's cost effective.
Okay.
So that's why, I mean, this is the point where people's eyes start glazing over usually. So yeah, it's just that my day to day is just, I have like up to 10 projects. I basically manage the team who are working on them to make sure we're delivering to budget, timelines, etc. And yeah, like reviewing models, reviewing manuscripts, that kind of stuff.
Do you quite like that it's very different to football?
Yeah, it's a big part of it. I think it kind of comes back to when I got injured with 2 ACLs. Like, it's always been something that my family were really keen on. I mean, when I started football, we didn't have there was no career.
Yeah.
Like, there was never a plan like B in terms of, like, you know, or plan A in terms of being able to actually earn enough. And it's great for the girls coming through now that they can see that. But
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely couldn't see it, and my parents definitely couldn't see it. So it was always kind of expected that I'd go to university. But I mean, I loved it. Like, I loved school. I was that nerdy kid in the back who, like, would be like, oh, I've done my homework, and everyone else would groan. Like, that is me to a T. So I always loved school, and I knew I'd go to it. And I just kind of, it was never that I set out to be this, but I did biological sciences at uni. So just based on the fact that I liked biology and I was halfway decent at it, and that was my best A-level grade. There wasn't too much more thought into it than that. I was just like, I'll keep my eyes wide open, like my options as wide open as I can. And then we did a epidemiological module, which is kind of the study of diseases.
Okay.
And I really enjoyed that. So I did my master's in control of infectious diseases. a year before the pandemic.
I was going to say, it was about COVID time, wasn't it? Because I remember we just came to you and we're like, right, what's going on? Are we going to be in lockdown? And you'd be like, well, I haven't really got all the answers, but definitely we knew you were in something in that field.
Yeah, we actually we had a module on pandemic flu the year before the COVID, so it was very interesting seeing it all play out. So yeah, I really enjoyed that, and just based on that, we had a health economics module in there, and yeah, just applied to loads of jobs and ended up in a health economics job. So really, I mean, I just by looking at what doors are open, and then just trying stuff.
Being pretty intelligent must help as well.
I mean, you say I'll be good at pub quiz. You ask anyone I know, I am so bad. If someone then suddenly asks me a question, I'm like, my mind blanks.
On the spot.
I need some time to think, but
fair enough.
Once I've had that, I'm all right.
So it's a very demanding job, and then you're playing football at, a good level, and particularly last year in the Championship and previous seasons. There's still players now. I know that you've got the professional side of the game now, where players don't have to focus so much on dual careers, but have you got any advice of how you've managed that dual career to anyone that's either thinking of doing it or is in the middle of it but maybe struggling a little bit? What sort of things do you do to help maintain that balance? And I know sometimes it's not always possible, but do you have any sort of strategies or anything that helps you?
Yeah, I think it's something that I've had to work on. I don't think I've always necessarily had that balance. I think a lot of it is just organisation.
Yeah.
It's like really planning things in. I think I'm best when you sit down, look at your week, go, okay, when am I going to do prehab or yoga, or when am I going to do recovery, or and I'm still not always great at that, especially when there's a lot on at work. I think that's the key thing. But I think one of the key things is for me, dual career is super important. I think even though we have the opportunity now to make money, you still need something afterwards. I also think it's quite key for you not to have all of your identity wrapped up in football, because especially when you get injured, I think it makes it much tougher if you don't have anything else to focus on. But yeah, in terms of just being able to balance it, a lot of it is just communication with everyone. Communication with my work in terms of like they're super flexible in terms of leaving earlier to come to training or leaving earlier for games or things like that. Communication with the coaches if like I'm going to have to stay later for a bit, or I need a bit more recovery time, or that understanding of what actually is you're doing, because I don't think that's always necessarily, people can't read your mind, so you have to be able to say, and if that support structure is in place, then I think that helps.
Yeah, most definitely. And you've touched on injuries a couple of times, unfortunately, something that you know probably way too much about. As you know, we're partnering with Melp, the mental help app, for this series, and I think it's really important, especially with everything in the media now about injuries that a lot of particularly female players are suffering from. You've touched on it a little bit, but how did that impact your mental health through those injuries? Was it different earlier in your career to later on? And how did you get through those times?
It was tough. So I did my ACL, both knees, once in 2016, I want to say, and once in 2017. So pretty close together. And it was tough. Like, I think the first one was tough, and the second one was really tough.
Yeah. Because, for me, I was really fortunate that I didn't have an ACL or any really big injuries. But for me, probably I would have assumed that the second time round would have been easier because you know what you've been through. But obviously that's not the case for you.
No, I mean, I got lucky with my first one was at Chelsea. I say I got lucky. I mean, ideally wouldn't have happened. But I was at Chelsea at the time, and I got the best rehab possible. Basically, I did my injury on the Sunday, had the MRI on Monday, and was in surgery by Friday.
Wow.
And then had physio every day. So it was tough. But I was at uni, and it was, it was difficult. But like I didn't really know what was coming, and I think that probably helped. Like, you hear of everyone, ACL, it takes a long time, but I don't think you know how hard it is until you're in it. So I didn't so I didn't know that, which helped. And I had uni to kind of keep my focus on it. And as I said or mentioned before, like that was key for me. It meant I had friends outside of football who did not care or understand what it meant, really, what football was. And
or what an ACL is.
Yeah, like honestly, like didn't know anything. And it just meant that I had something else to focus on. And it meant I could like really focus on that side of things.
Yeah.
So that was great. I mean, it was still tough. Like, it just takes a long time and you want to play. And, like, I was always the kind of player, I couldn't watch any games, that I just could not watch games. So I'd, like, keep myself out of it a bit more. But you still feel quite in touch with, like, the team stuff because you're in the gym, people around. I took it for granted. And then I did my second one. And then that was tough because I'd left Chelsea at that point. I'd made the decision that I'd been out for an ACL. I'd sat on the bench the year before. I was 21, 22, and I was just like, right, I'm ready to like play regular football. But I was still at uni, so it limited my options. So I went to London Bees, who were in the Championship at the time, but just didn't have the same resources as Chelsea. And I think it was probably a common story for a lot of the Championship clubs at the time. So I did my ACL 6 months after joining that, and they just didn't have the support. I remember going down and just thinking, I can't do this again. I just do not have the mental capacity to do this again. So I went home. Lifeguarded, went on any holidays that anyone ever asked me to go on. And I said yes, and just did my rehab at home, like really slowly.
Just from the knowledge of what you'd done the first time round. And
like the physio who at Chelsea, like Chelsea were really good in terms of like they helped me out even though I wasn't their player anymore. Like gave me a game ready, like let me come down to see the physio like whenever.
You don't hear those stories. That's good to hear that.
No, like Emma Hayes and Chelsea at that point were like super. Like, it was so helpful. Like I knew kind of what to do, but just having someone, especially the first 2 weeks, like I stayed in Surrey and went to the physio every day. Just was so helpful. And then big thanks to Aaron, the physio at the time. Like he really helped me through that.
So did you get your surgery quite soon or no?
So I did it, and then 3 months later. So I did the second ACL just before my exams at uni.
Okay.
Just before my dissertation was due, and I just said I had like a holiday to Thailand booked, and it was the end of my uni. And I had holiday with like my friends, and I was like, I am just gonna, for 3 months, not do anything. Did all kind of the prehab you do before surgery, but just let it all settle. Luckily, I'd got private health insurance before I went to London Bees, because I was like, just in case. So it's always worth doing that kind of protection. But and just then did it at home. So it took me probably, I'd say over 12 months. It was 18 months before I was back playing. I made my debut for Tottenham. But
wow. So you never went back to Bees after that? It's amazing, really, like to think of that was a championship at the time, and like it's so difficult to navigate. But I think I probably would have been similar to you, and it's the second time I need to just take myself away from it. And I think Claire Rafferty did something similar actually at Chelsea. She just went travelling. Because she was like, I don't want to, like, you don't want to face it. And it's not that you don't want to ever get to it. And I'm glad that obviously you came back to the game, and you did come back to playing and falling in love with football again. But I can't imagine how difficult that must have been. And it's a big part of the game now. I think that as a club and in my role now, I'd like to hope that we can try and support players that are going through things. Sometimes financially it might not always be possible, but we'd like to get the right people around players and make sure that they're okay. So hopefully we're trying to do that. But do you think, I mean, obviously when you came here, I think it was on your unofficial debut in a friendly, didn't you break your wrist? You must have thought, wow, not again.
I honestly could not believe my luck. I was like, but 2 ACL injuries. Then I had a season at Tottenham where I basically sat on the bench. And then I was like, I'm so ready to play. And then, debut. And I break my wrist, and honestly, told my mum about it. She's a GP, and she was like, "You've not broken your wrist." I was like, "Okay." Went home, had a shower, had some food, and was like, "Still hurts. I better go to the emergency department." And yeah, it turned out I broke my wrist, and then I sat there going, "Okay, well, I really hope they sign me with a broken wrist. I'm out for 6 weeks."
Yeah. No, I do.
I
I
mean,
remember
luckily.
that, and it was. I just because I thought we're getting a good player here because I'd known you and played against you, and I think I was aware of you when I was at Chelsea when
We
you were coming
briefly
through.
crossed, yeah.
And I thought we've got a player, and then I think it was about 6 weeks, wasn't it, or something? Because was it a normal break, or there was a reason you just couldn't play in the cast or something?
Yeah, they just had this heavy cast and they refused to let me play in it.
Yeah, but talking of your mum, I feel like she's one of our biggest supporters. I think she's fantastic. But like the whole family thing, as a footballer and juggling life, work, football, how important are people like your mum and your family to have around you?
Oh yeah, huge. I mean, yeah, my mum and dad are still in Lincolnshire, but like my mum comes down regularly to come watch games, and like, I've recently bought a house in the area, and my dad's come down to like do some reno stuff for us and keep
Nice.
things moving while we're like just without them, I couldn't manage it all, and like even every so often my mum's like, "Oh, do you want me to come do a clean?" Which I'm like, "No, it's fine. I'm old enough." But like just knowing that you've got them in
Just
your
knowing that they're
corner
there.
makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Not everyone has that like support network, and my brother's just in Finsbury, moved to Finsbury Park as well now. So
Go and support him. Is that the one that plays futsal?
no, he is still in Loughborough. He now
okay.
plays for Manchester. So he's kind of moving the opposite direction to everyone else. But yeah.
Well, no, thank you very much for coming on and being our second guest. You do have the job, you don't have to do it now, but you do have the job of nominating our next guest, as Megan Chandler was the one that chose you. But yeah, thank you very much for coming on. It's been a pleasure chatting to you, and hopefully everybody can now understand what goes into being a solid defensive rock. That is Anne Meiwald. Is that how you say it?
Meiwald,
Meiwald. Even though we call you May. But yeah, thank you very much.
No, thanks. It's been great being on here.
Good.